Dominic Vale looked furious enough to bankrupt winter. Snow drifted over Ohika Castle, whitening the hedges and tuxedoed shoulders. Behind us, the masquerade glittered through tall windows. Ahead, a black reflecting pool shivered under the December wind, and I was standing in it. Of course I was. Water soaked my trousers to the thigh. My teeth chattered. One hand held a velvet box, the other clutched the sleeve of a startled Noah Bennett. Noah was 26, an Omega, heir to the Bennett Foundation, and according to the novel I had transmigrated into, the beautiful center of an absurd romantic harem. Dominic Vale was 33, an alpha founder and CEO of Vale Meridian Group, and the novel's coldest, most terrifying alpha root. He was also staring at me as if I had personally offended the concept of common sense. Elliot, he said. That was my name now. Elliot Hayes, 27, male Omega, executive assistant. Disposable cannon fodder. I swallowed. Before you say anything, I have a very reasonable explanation. Dominic stepped into the water without removing his shoes. I stared at his handmade black Oxfords. That explanation has now become significantly less reasonable. He ignored me, crossed the pool in 4 long strides, and took the velvet box from my numb fingers. Then he seized my wrist. His palm was hot. Mine was so cold I could barely feel it. "What did I tell you?" he asked quietly. "The last time you tried to solve a problem involving freezing water." Behind him, Noah coughed into his fist. I suspected he was hiding a smile. I tried to remember. Unfortunately, my brain had been replaced by a snow globe. Wear waterproof boots. Dominic's jaw tightened. No, I guessed. Avoid dramatic fountains after 8 p.m. He pulled me closer. The world narrowed. Dominic smelled of cedar black tea and carefully restrained alpha pheromones. Snow melted in his dark hair, and the composure that usually unsettled Wall Street had cracked around the edges. "I told you," he said, "that if you ever risked freezing yourself solid for another man again, I would drain every fountain in New York State. That seems environmentally irresponsible." Elliot, my joke died when I saw his eyes. He was not angry, he was scared. That realization landed somewhere under my ribs, soft and devastating. No one in my first life had ever looked at me like that, not after hospital night shifts, skipped meals, or years of pretending exhaustion was a personality trait. People had cared about me. Dominic looked as though my being cold had become a personal emergency. He lifted one hand to my face. His thumb brushed a drop of icy water from my cheek. The ballroom noise faded behind the glass. "Tell me to stop," he said. My heart forgot its job. This was not in the novel. None of this was in the novel. Because in the original story, Dominic Vale was supposed to be in love with Noah Bennett, and I was supposed to be the man everyone hated. Dominic leaned closer. I could feel the warmth of his breath against my mouth. Then, from inside the ballroom, someone shouted my name. "Elliot!" Dominic's eyes closed for 1 second. I recognized the voice immediately. Blake Carter, 29, Alpha, Grammy-winning singer. America's favorite beautiful disaster. A second voice followed, softer but no less dangerous. "Elliot, are you out there?" Noah called. Dominic opened his eyes. I looked from him to the ballroom doors, then down at the water around my knees. Somewhere inside my head, a cheerful electronic chime sounded. "Plot correction system. Congratulations, host. Romantic deviation has reached 97%. I wanted to scream. Almost 2 months earlier, I had still believed I could fix the story. I had been an idiot. If broken plots, stubborn alphas, and one exhausted Omega making terrible decisions sound like your kind of story, stay with me, and follow the channel for more BL like this. The disaster gets more romantic from here. Almost 2 months earlier, I woke up on a velvet sofa beneath a portrait of a dead man wearing armor. For a full minute, I assumed the hospital had finally sent me on mandatory vacation, and I had sleepwalked into a museum. Then the dead man in the portrait blinked. I sat up so fast my neck popped. The portrait did not blink again. "Great," I whispered. "Neurological symptoms. Love that for me." A translucent blue screen appeared in the air. "Welcome, host." I stared. The screen stared back in the spiritual sense. "You have entered the world of The Gilded Cage of Alphas, a best-selling modern ABO romance." Oh, absolutely not. I knew that title. A coworker at Harborview Medical Center in Seattle had forced me to read it on night shift. Every man in it owned a penthouse, a private jet, a traumatic childhood, or all three. Noah Bennett, a gentle male Omega with a complicated inheritance, was the protagonist. 2 alphas orbited him. Ruthless CEO Dominic Vale and superstar singer Blake Carter. And then there was Elliot Hayes. A petty, jealous assistant who tried to humiliate Noah, leaked a private photograph, and eventually got fired so spectacularly that readers celebrated in the comments. I looked down at my hands. Long fingers, pale skin. A silver signet ring I distinctly did not own. No, I found a mirror. The face in the mirror was softer than mine had been. Dark blonde hair, gray-green eyes, and a mouth one sarcastic sentence from trouble. No, 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 the system chimed. Your mission is simple. Preserve the original romantic plot. I was an R nurse. Nothing in nursing school prepared me for literary homicide. Failure to complete key plot tasks may delay return privileges. Success provides compensation in your original world. Original world time is suspended during participation. Permanent residence closes that timeline safely. No consciousness has been displaced. This body is a narrative construct assigned to host. I froze. How much? The number appeared. I sat down, then stood up, then sat down again. I have principles, I said weakly. The system displayed the number a second time. My principles are open to interdisciplinary discussion. The first task appeared. Task 1. Attend the Bennett Foundation Medieval Art Benefit at the Met Cloisters. Create an intimate misunderstanding with Noah Bennett so Dominic Vale becomes jealous. I stared at the screen. Create how intimate. Original Elliot spills champagne on Noah, follows him into a private conservation room, and attempts to kiss him. I put my face in my hands. I am not sexually harassing anyone for a plot coupon. The system was silent, then. Alternative completion path available. Generate equivalent romantic misunderstanding. Now we're negotiating. 4 hours later, I stood beneath the Met Cloisters stone arches in northern Manhattan, surrounded by medieval tapestries and donors whose watches cost more than my old apartment. The place felt like Europe had been folded carefully into New York. Romanesque columns, carved saints, winter gardens, stone corridors smelling faintly of old wood and cold rain. It was exactly the kind of setting that made people confess love or inherit a curse. I checked my reflection in a dark window. Black suit, white shirt, no tie, omega scent suppressants applied correctly. Mission, I muttered. Cause a misunderstanding, do not commit crimes, go home. You always talk to yourself before social disasters? I turned. Noah Bennett stood beside me. He was prettier than the cover art. Chestnut hair, hazel eyes, a gentle smile, and a cream dinner jacket that made him look born for tragic paintings. He tilted his head. You're Elliot Hayes, right? Dominic's assistant? Executive assistant, I said. The executive part is important. It justifies my caffeine consumption. Noah laughed. That was my first problem. The original Noah was supposed to be delicate, cautious, and easy to corner. This Noah looked amused. My second problem arrived 5 seconds later. A server passed. I reached for a glass of champagne to complete the scene. Noah smoothly took it first. If you spill this on me, he said, I'm charging you for dry cleaning. He sipped. You knew? Knew what? Nothing. His eyes curved. Definitely not delicate. The system buzzed in my head. Plot progress, 12%. I needed a misunderstanding, so I did what any responsible adult would do. I improvised badly. Your collar is crooked. It is? Very. It was perfectly straight. I stepped closer and reached up. Noah lowered his head slightly to help me. From the doorway behind him came a deep voice. Elliot. Every cell in my body filed for resignation. Dominic Vale stood under the archway. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dark-haired, and frighteningly composed. His simple black suit looked more expensive than everyone else's. His gaze moved from my hand near Noah's throat to my face. The system chimed happily. Misunderstanding generated. Task complete. I smiled at Dominic. Good evening, Mr. Vale. He looked at my hand. I removed it from Noah's collar. Immediately. Walk with me, Dominic said. That sounded less like a request and more like a merger. I followed him through the cloister garden. Cold air slipped beneath my collar. Bare branches scratched at the gray sky. Somewhere beyond the stone wall, the Hudson River carried the color of steel. Dominic stopped beside a fountain that had been drained for winter. For several seconds, he said nothing. I began planning my defense. Noah's collar was dangerous. I had saved him from textile failure. America was built on service. Dominic looked down at me. Were you flirting with Noah Bennett? I lowered my voice. Professionally? His mouth twitched. It was so slight I almost missed it. Then he took my hand. I forgot the rest of my joke. His fingers closed around mine, rubbing warmth into my knuckles. You're freezing, he said. I looked at our joined hands, then at him. Aren't you supposed to be jealous? His brows drew together. Of Noah? Yes. Why? Because you are the primary alpha root. Because he is the protagonist. because the entire reason I exist in this world is to make you realize you love him. Instead, I said, he's very attractive. Dominic's gaze sharpened. You noticed. There it was. Jealousy. I relaxed. Plot restored. Then Dominic lifted my hand, breathed warmth over my fingers, and said, I'm not angry because you touched him. My heart gave one stupid beat. I'm angry because you came outside without a coat. That was the first moment I realized the story might already be broken. The next morning, I arrived at Vale Meridian's Midtown office, determined to behave like a background character. Background characters did not make eye contact with billionaires. Background characters did not remember the exact temperature of a billionaire's hand. Background characters definitely did not replay the sentence, I'm angry because you came outside without a coat, while brushing their teeth. I failed all 3 standards before 9:30. Dominic's office occupied the 46th floor above Bryant Park. Manhattan looked crisp through the windows, while CNBC ran silent market headlines, and I organized his schedule. My new life came with excellent dental insurance, a salary that made my old nurse paycheck look shy, and a boss who sent emails containing only punctuation. At 8:07 a.m., Dominic had sent coffee. At 8:09, please. At 8:12, you forgot breakfast again. The last one bothered me. I brought coffee into his office. Dominic sat behind a walnut desk, reviewing plans for a waterfront redevelopment in Boston. His tie was charcoal, his sleeves were buttoned. His alpha scent was nearly invisible under suppressants and self-control. I placed the cup beside him. Breakfast, he said without looking up. I had coffee. That is a beverage, a philosophical distinction. He opened a drawer and slid a paper bag toward me. Inside was a warm egg sandwich from the cafe downstairs. I stared at it. Did you buy me breakfast? Grace did. Grace Holloway, 38 Beta, Vale Meridian COO, was Dominic's professional conscience. She introduced herself by saying, if he growls, hand him a spreadsheet. I picked up the sandwich. Please tell Grace I accept her proposal of marriage. Dominic finally looked at me. No, jealous? The word escaped before my survival instinct could tackle it. His eyes narrowed. I took a bite of sandwich and pretended chewing required total concentration. A knock saved me. Grace stepped in. Noah Bennett is here. I nearly inhaled bread. Dominic's gaze moved immediately to me. Why me? I was not Noah Bennett. I was not responsible for incoming Noah Bennett's. Unfortunately, the system chimed. Task 2. Arrange private proximity between Dominic Vale and Noah Bennett. That sounded easy. Almost suspiciously easy. Noah entered wearing a camel coat over a navy sweater, carrying a leather portfolio. He smiled at Dominic, then he saw me. His smile became brighter. Elliot. Dominic's pen stopped moving. I smiled back carefully. Mr. Bennett. Noah. Right, Noah. Dominic set down his pen. The sound was tiny. Somehow it felt like thunder. The Bennett Foundation planned to turn a decommissioned railway building in Hudson into an arts residence, with Vale Meridian consulting on preservation and accessibility. Perfect romantic subplot material. Shared values and attractive men arguing over brickwork. I should have left them alone. The system agreed. Host should exit. I took one step toward the door. Stay, Dominic said. I stopped. Noah looked between us. The system made a noise like a computer reconsidering its career. I'm only taking notes, I said. Then take notes, Dominic replied. For 40 minutes, Noah and Dominic discussed adaptive reuse, grant requirements, and whether the original steel trusses could be preserved. There was no flirting. None. Noah flirted with me instead. Not aggressively. That would have been easier. He asked about the reading room, remembered the manuscript I had admired at the cloisters, and brushed my fingers when I passed him water. Your hands are warmer today, he said softly. Across the table, Dominic went still. I brightened. Excellent. Jealousy. The plot was breathing again. Then Noah leaned back and said, Dominic, are you planning to keep glaring at Elliot every time I speak to him? I stopped writing. Dominic's expression did not change. I'm not glaring. You are. It's impressive. I'm looking at my assistant, like he's a hostile takeover. I raised my hand. As the hostile takeover in question, may I request hazard pay? Noah laughed. Dominic rubbed a hand over his mouth. I had the strange feeling he was hiding another smile. When the meeting ended, Noah lingered beside my desk. Dinner Saturday? He asked. My soul left my body. The system produced 3 warning tones in succession. I glanced at Dominic's closed office door. With Dominic? No. With the foundation team? No. With the concept of urban preservation? Noah smiled slowly. With me. I lowered my voice. You're supposed to be interested in Dominic. His smile vanished. What? Nothing. No, say that again. I have low blood sugar. You just ate half of Dominic's emergency pastry. I looked down. I was holding a croissant I did not remember acquiring. Noah's gaze softened. Elliot, Dominic, and I aren't dating. Not yet. Not ever. The certainty in his voice disturbed me more than it should have. Noah leaned one shoulder against my desk. He's helping me with the Hudson project, because we have an agreement. My foundation receives development support. His company receives naming rights for one of the public galleries. That's all. I blinked. In the novel, that partnership had been the beginning of their romance. You don't like him? I respect him. Noah paused. I also enjoy watching him suffer when you smile at other people. I almost dropped the croissant. Noah walked away before I could respond. The system appeared. Plot deviation, 31%. I glared at it. This is not my fault. Host displays unusually high romantic interference. I adjusted a collar. Correct. That should not dismantle an entire novel. The screen disappeared. Coward. At 6:30, most of the floor had emptied. Snow had begun outside, feathering against the dark glass. I was finishing emails when Dominic appeared beside my desk. You're going to dinner with Noah. It was not a question. I looked up. Possibly. No. I stared at him. His face remained calm. Was that CEO feedback or personal tyranny? Personal. My stomach fluttered. Very inconvenient. I leaned back in my chair. You can't forbid me from having dinner. I know. Good. I'm still asking you not to go. His honesty caught me off guard. The office had become quiet enough that I could hear the heating system whispering through the vents. Why? I asked. Dominic looked at me for a long moment. Then his eyes dropped to my mouth. There was nothing accidental about it. Because, he said, I don't think Noah is asking you to discuss architecture. I swallowed. And that bothers you? Yes. The answer came too quickly. No corporate language, no plausible deniability. Just yes. My chest tightened with a warm, frightening little pulse. I forced a grin. You know, for a man who negotiates billion-dollar contracts, your romantic strategy is surprisingly primitive. I'm not being romantic. Of course not. I'm being clear. That might be worse. Dominic leaned down, one hand resting on the back of my chair. His voice dropped. Then let me be clearer. My breath stopped. He was close enough that I could see the faint shadow of stubble at his jaw. If Bennett touches you again, he said, I will have a very difficult evening. I waited. That's it? His eyes flicked to mine. What were you expecting? I don't know. A hostile takeover. This time he did smile. Small, rare, ruinous. My heart made an embarrassing decision without consulting me. That was the second sign the story was broken. The first had been Dominic warming my hands. The second was realizing I wanted him to do it again. I did not go to dinner with Noah. I told myself this was because preserving the plot required emotional distance. It had nothing to do with Dominic's smile. Absolutely nothing. On Saturday, Noah texted me a photograph of an empty restaurant chair and the message. Coward, I replied. Victim of scheduling, he wrote. Dominic scheduled you? I did not answer. 3 dots appeared. Then, coward confirmed. I was still offended on Monday when the system assigned my next task. Task 3. Attend the Bennett Foundation Winter Preservation Gala in Newport, Rhode Island. Ensure Noah Bennett experiences a public emotional crisis involving his late mother's locket. Dominic Vale must provide comfort. I stared at the text. That is offensively specific. The system supplied the original scene summary. In the book, Mason stole Noah's locket and threw it into a decorative pool. Dominic recovered it and comforted Noah beneath the snow. The first proof that his coldness hid tenderness. Beautiful scene, excellent pacing. One problem. Dominic currently seemed more interested in monitoring my scarf usage than Noah's emotional development. The gala filled the breakers with marble, gilded ceilings, and warm lights. Outside, wind came hard off Rhode Island Sound. Inside, Old Wealth glowed against carved stone and dark wood. I wore a midnight blue tuxedo. Dominic wore black. Noah wore ivory. Mason Wells wore the expression of a man born with a trust fund and no natural predators. Mason was 28, beta, Noah's maternal cousin, and the novel's temporary antagonist. Family money had bought him a seat on the Foundation's donor advisory committee. His talents were cold smiles and cruelty delivered where no one wanted a scene. He intercepted Noah near the terrace doors. I noticed because the system buzzed. Key scene beginning. I also noticed because Dominic, who was speaking with a J. Morgan executive about a preservation loan, stopped listening mid-sentence. His attention went to Noah. Good. Finally. Then his attention shifted to me. Of course. I mouthed. Stay there. Dominic's brow lifted. I followed Noah outside. The terrace smelled of salt and snow. Far below, the Atlantic moved black beneath a pale winter moon. Mason held a small silver locket between two fingers. Noah's face had gone still. "Give it back," he said. Mason smiled. "It's barely worth anything. That isn't the point. Your mother wore sentimental junk. You inherited the habit." I arrived beside them. "Hi," I said. "Sorry to interrupt what appears to be a master class in disappointing your ancestors." Mason looked at me. "And you are?" "Elliot Hayes, Vale's assistant." Executive assistant. Again, the executive part pays for my self-esteem. Noah closed his eyes briefly. Mason's smile thinned. In the original story, Elliot would have sided with Mason. I had considered doing that for approximately 4 seconds. Then Mason tossed the locket. It flashed silver beneath the terrace lights and landed with a small splash in the long ornamental fountain running beside the balustrade. The system chimed. "Host must not interfere. Dominic Vale will resolve scene." I looked through the open doors. Dominic was trapped by 3 donors and Grace, who was making a hand gesture that clearly meant, "Do not cause a scandal in a National Historic Landmark." Noah stepped toward the water. I caught his arm. "It's freezing. It was my mother's." His voice had changed. No tears, no dramatic collapse. Just a quiet fracture. I knew that voice. I had heard it from patients trying not to be afraid. Something in me shifted. "Okay," I said. "Then we get it back." The system flashed red. Warning. Plot roll mismatch. Put it on my tab. I handed Noah my phone and dropped to my knees at the fountain's edge. The marble bit through my trousers. I rolled up one sleeve and reached into the black water until the cold climbed past my elbow. "Oh, that is hostile." Noah caught the back of my jacket. "Elliot, stop. I'm not entering the fountain. This is growth." My fingers found tile, coins, and absolutely no locket. Behind us, people had begun gathering at the terrace doors. Perfect, I had become entertainment without even getting my shoes wet. A shadow fell across me. Dominic stood at my shoulder, expression hard enough to crack stone. In one hand he held a long brass fireplace tool borrowed from the nearest hearth. "What are you doing?" "Preserving emotional continuity." English, looking for Noah's locket. Dominic glanced once at the water, hooked the chain with the curved end of the tool, and lifted the silver locket free. I stared. "That feels like cheating. It feels like using equipment." He caught my wrist before I could reach for it. My sleeve was soaked to the shoulder, my fingers numb and pink. His palm closed around my hand, warm enough to hurt. For one suspended second, the joking part of my brain went quiet. Cedar, winter air, and the controlled edge of his alpha scent surrounded me. Dominic's eyes darkened. "Elliot." My pulse kicked, I whispered. "Noah's watching. I know. You should give him the locket." "I will, and comfort him." Dominic's jaw tightened. "I am currently trying to stop my assistant from losing feeling in his hand. I still have feeling. You're shaking. I'm charming under pressure." He hauled me to my feet and pulled me inside by the wrist. The terrace went quiet. Noah's eyes widened. Grace covered her face. Mason looked as if someone had canceled inherited wealth. "I can walk, then walk faster. I have dignity. You put your bare arm into fountain water in December. That is not evidence against dignity." A staff member rushed forward with towels. Dominic ignored him long enough to wrap his own tuxedo jacket around my shoulders. Then he crossed back to Noah. Finally, plot. I watched from beneath Dominic's coat as he placed the locket in Noah's hand. Noah closed his fingers around it. "Thank you," he said. Dominic nodded. This was the moment. The romantic turning point. The system hovered expectantly. At me. His eyes softened. "Elliot," he said, "you're an idiot." I smiled. "That seems to be the consensus." Noah crossed the room, took my face between both hands, and kissed my forehead. The system crashed, not metaphorically. The blue screen flickered, produced a line of unreadable symbols, and vanished. The ballroom became very quiet. I looked at Noah. Noah looked delighted. Then I looked at Dominic. His face had become perfectly calm, which was worse than anger. Much worse. Later, upstairs in a private sitting room, Dominic stood by the fireplace while I changed out of my soaked shirt. Staff had found a sweater. The borrowed sweater was too large, its sleeves swallowing my hands. I looked like I had escaped from a luxury lost and found. Dominic did not speak. I adjusted the sleeves. "You're upset." "Yes." "With Noah?" "No." "With Mason?" "No." "With Rhode Island?" His eyes closed. I smiled despite myself. He opened them and came toward me. The fire painted warm copper along his cheekbones. He stopped close. "Why do you keep doing that?" he asked. "Doing what?" "Acting as if your body is the cheapest thing in the room." The humor left me. Dominic's voice stayed low. You were cold, you knew exactly what that order would do to you, and you reached into it anyway. It mattered to Noah. And you? I did not understand the question. He seemed to see that. Something painful moved across his face. Does anything matter to you if it only belongs to you? The fire snapped softly. For one moment I was back in Seattle, 26 hours into a double shift, eating crackers over a sink, because sitting down felt like wasted time. I made my voice light. I'm very attached to my phone. Dominic did not smile. He touched my wrist, not gripping, just resting 2 fingers over my pulse. You matter to me, he said. The words were so simple that I had nowhere to hide from them. My heart stumbled. This was too early, too direct, too much. The story had barely begun. I tried to joke. What a terrible lapse in judgment. His thumb moved once across the inside of my wrist. Probably. I looked down at his hand. Dominic, yes, you're supposed to like Noah. Silence, then. Who told you that? I laughed too quickly. Genre convention? He studied me. I could feel the system attempting to reboot somewhere in the distance. Dominic stepped back, but his gaze stayed on me. Then your genre is wrong. That sentence followed me all the way back to New York. The system returned after 48 hours. It was less cheerful. Emergency recalibration complete. Welcome back. Current romantic roots. Dominic Vale Elliott Hayes, 68%. Noah Bennett Elliott Hayes, 42%. Dominic Vale Noah Bennett, 7%. I stared. That last number used to be 90. Correct. Can you fix it? Host is the primary source of deviation. You make it sound like I leaked radiation. The system displayed my next task. Task 4. Trigger the Blake Carter route by attending his Madison Square Garden concert. I pointed at the screen. No, we do not need another man. Mandatory. Why? Original plot requires the CEO route, idol route, and Noah-centered romantic conflict to remain active. Original plot is currently face down in a fountain. The system ignored me. So on Friday night, I went to Madison Square Garden with Grace. Grace, I discovered, was a Blake Carter fan with the devotion of a medieval knight. She had VIP seats. She had a limited edition light stick. She had opinions about every album. You are not allowed to tell Dominic, she warned, that his COO screams lyrics in arenas. I will delete your calendar access. You fight dirty. She recited Blake's schedule with alarming fluency, including a Boston charity performance the following week. I retained none of it. At the time, Boston was not part of my escape plan. The concert was enormous. Blue light, silver smoke, a crowd shaking the floor beneath our feet. Blake Carter moved across the stage like attention had been invented for him. Blake was 29, alpha, a 2-time Grammy-winning singer-songwriter, and Noah's childhood friend. Black hair fell into his eyes above a leather jacket and flashing rings. The system pinged. Root character located. I noticed. My problem was that I had worked 12 hours before the concert. Dominic had flown to Chicago for meetings. Noah had sent me 3 photographs of possible furniture for the Hudson residence. Grace had trapped me in a conversation about municipal bonds. By the 4th song, the bass was warm, the seat was comfortable, and my body remembered it had once survived hospital night shifts. I fell asleep at a Blake Carter concert. In the 3rd row, I woke to Grace shaking my shoulder. Elliot, Blake is looking at you. I opened my eyes. On stage, Blake Carter was indeed looking directly at me. 30,000 people followed his gaze. I considered dying socially. Blake lifted his microphone. Long week? The crowd laughed. I covered my face. Grace abandoned me emotionally. Blake smiled. It was devastatingly photogenic. This next one is a ballad, he said. Try to stay with me. The crowd screamed. I did stay awake, mostly from humiliation. After the concert, Grace used her VIP access to take us through a private corridor toward the exit. The elevator doors opened. Blake Carter stood inside with 1 security guard. I nearly turned around. Grace grabbed my sleeve. Do not embarrass me. I think that ship has reached international waters. We entered. Blake removed his sunglasses. His eyes were a clear, striking blue. You, he said. I pointed at Grace. She made me come. Grace pinched me. Blake laughed. You slept through my favorite song. I'm an equal opportunity sleeper. What does that mean? It means please don't take it personally. His gaze lingered on my face. You're Dominic Vale's assistant. My stomach sank. Famous people knowing my employment history felt unsafe. How do you know that? Noah showed me a picture. Grace slowly turned toward me. I ignored her. What picture? Blake smiled. Ask Noah. The elevator opened. He stepped out, then looked back. Good night, Sleeping Beauty. I'm filing a complaint with your label. Make sure you spell my name right. The next morning I woke to 37 messages. The internet had discovered me. A photograph from the concert showed Blake on stage under white lights, looking down toward the front row. In the corner, I was asleep with my head tilted against Grace's shoulder. Blake had reposted it with one caption, "Brutal critic." I stared at my phone. Then Dominic called. I answered cautiously. "Good morning." "Why are you on Blake Carter's Instagram?" No greeting. Excellent. I was conducting market research. Sleeping? Immersive market research. Silence. Then, very quietly, "He knows who you are." Apparently, Dominic had zoomed in on the situation. "Yes. How?" "Noah." Another silence. This one had weather systems. "Dominic, I'm moving my flight." "What?" "I'll be back this afternoon. You have meetings. They're finished." They were scheduled through tomorrow. Now they're finished faster. I sat up in bed. "You are not flying back early because a singer made fun of me online." "I'm not. Good. I'm flying back because I want to see you." My mouth opened. Nothing came out. Dominic hung up. I stared at the phone. The system appeared. Blake Carter Elliott Hayes, 19%. "Why?" I demanded. Route successfully activated. I was unconscious, apparently effective. For once, I had no comeback. The plot correction system became desperate. 2 days after the concert, it assigned the task I had been dreading. Task 5. Obtain compromising photographs of Noah Bennett and use them to create leverage. No. Mandatory major plot point. No. Return eligibility may be affected. I stared at the screen. There were limits to how far I would go for money or a way home. I had spent years in emergency medicine learning that people remembered the moments when someone took away their control. I was not going to become that memory for Noah. Give me an alternative path. The system waited. Equivalent public misunderstanding may satisfy task logic. Define equivalent. Photographic evidence suggesting inappropriate intimacy between Elliott Hayes and Noah Bennett. I rubbed my face. So I don't need compromising pictures of him. I need compromising pictures of us. Acceptable. The system gave me the task Sunday. I spent 3 days finding a version that violated neither Noah's privacy nor my self-respect. By rainy Wednesday, I was in his Tribeca apartment with a Polaroid, explaining the dumbest plan of my second life. Noah listened from his kitchen island, chin propped on one hand. He wore gray sweatpants and an oversized Columbia University sweatshirt. When I finished, he asked, "So you need a picture that would make Dominic jealous?" "Yes. Why?" "Administrative reasons." "What administration?" "Cosmic." He stared at me. I stared back. Noah sighed. "You are the strangest man I know. Will you help?" His smile became mischievous. "Absolutely. That should have worried me." We took 6 harmless photographs. In one, Noah leaned against my shoulder while I pretended to read. In another, he fed me a strawberry. In the third, he put his head in my lap and laughed so hard the camera blurred. "This is not compromising," I complained. "It's intimate. You look like my younger brother." Noah sat up. "Take that back. You're wearing college merch and eating cereal at 9 p.m. I'm 26. That is exactly what a younger brother would say." He threw a pillow at me. I threw it back. The 7th photograph happened by accident. Noah lunged for the camera. I leaned away. We lost balance and fell sideways onto the sofa. Noah half over me, both of us laughing. The Polaroid flashed. At that exact second, the apartment door opened. Dominic stood there. Of course he did. The universe had comedic timing and personal resentment. Noah froze above me. I held the Polaroid camera against my chest. Dominic looked from Noah to me. Rain darkened the shoulders of his coat. "Explain," he said. I considered several lies. None survived contact with his face. "Art project?" Noah collapsed against me, laughing. Dominic's eyes narrowed. I pushed Noah off and sat up. "Why are you here?" "You left your work phone in my car." He held it up. "You drove across Manhattan to bring me a phone? You weren't answering your personal one." Noah stopped laughing. I stared at Dominic. That was not CEO behavior. That was boyfriend behavior. Dangerous boyfriend behavior. Dominic's gaze lowered to the Polaroids scattered over the rug. His expression changed. Not anger. Hurt. It was brief, but I saw it, and suddenly the joke was gone. I stood. "Dominic." He put my phone on the table. "I shouldn't have come." He turned toward the door. I moved before thinking. My hand closed around his wrist. "Wait." He stopped. Noah watched us quietly. Rain tapped the windows. I swallowed. "They're fake." Dominic looked at me. "What?" "The pictures. We staged them." "Why?" There it was again. The impossible question. "Because a floating computer told me to." "Because your life is supposed to belong to someone else." "Because I am trying to force you back into a story you keep refusing to follow." "I can't tell you." His face closed. "Then let go." My fingers tightened. I don't want to. The words escaped so quietly I almost did not hear them. Dominic did. His eyes changed. Behind me, Noah stood. I'm going to make tea, he announced. Neither of us answered. He walked into the kitchen with the exaggerated dignity of a man leaving a stage before the kiss scene. Dominic stepped closer. Elliot, my pulse jumped. I don't know what I'm doing, I admitted. That makes two of us. You always look like you know what you're doing. I run a company. It's mostly calendars and people pretending forecasts are facts. A laugh broke out of me. His expression softened. Then he lifted his hand and touched my cheek. The gesture was careful, almost hesitant. Dominic Vale, terrifying Alpha CEO, was asking permission without words. I leaned into his palm before I could stop myself. His breath changed. The air between us became warm and charged, Alpha and Omega scents threading together beneath the rain-clean apartment air. He lowered his forehead to mine. This is a terrible idea, I whispered. Yes, you're my boss. I can transfer you to Grace. That was disturbingly fast. I've considered it. You're supposed to. I stopped. His eyes opened. Supposed to what? I could not say love Noah again, not with his hand on my face. Not when Noah was in the kitchen deliberately running water, loud enough to pretend he could not hear us. So I said, nothing. Dominic's thumb brushed my cheekbone. Then stop running from a sentence you refused to finish. I looked at his mouth. He noticed. He leaned closer. My phone rang. We both froze. The screen lit up on the table. Blake Carter. Dominic stared at the name. I stared at the ceiling. Noah laughed from the kitchen. Your life is ridiculous, he called. I picked up the phone. This is not what it looks like. Dominic folded his arms. What does it look like? Like I'm being punished by the universe for something I did in a previous life. That, at least, was probably true. Blake had called because he was in New York for a late-night show and wanted breakfast. At midnight. Breakfast is a time period, I told him, not a personality. Pancakes disagree. Dominic was still standing in Noah's living room, arms folded. Noah returned with 3 mugs of tea and the expression of a man receiving premium entertainment for free. Blake continued through the phone. Their place in Soho open all night. No. Tomorrow? No. Sunday? Do you have friends? Yes, they're busy. Be busier, he laughed. Good night, Sleeping Beauty. I ended the call. Dominic said, Sleeping Beauty? No. That sounded like a nickname. It sounded like harassment by branding. Noah sipped his tea. I think it's cute. Your opinion has been revoked. I escaped the apartment shortly after that, mostly because being watched by 2 beautiful men while thinking about kissing one of them felt medically unsafe. For the next week, I attempted to restore normality. Normality refused. Dominic transferred my reporting line to Grace exactly as promised. Officially, I still coordinated executive operations. Unofficially, Dominic found reasons to appear near my desk at least 6 times a day. He brought coffee once. He brought lunch twice. On Thursday, he left a dark green scarf over the back of my chair without explanation. I held it up. What is this? Grace did not look away from her laptop. A scarf. I understand textile categories. Then why ask? Did he buy this? Grace's mouth curved. I signed the expense report. He expensed my scarf? No, he used his personal card. I made him reimburse the company for the car he took to buy it during business hours. I stared at Dominic's closed office door. That is the least romantic thing I have ever heard. It made him furious. That helps. I wore the scarf home. Of course I did. Blake kept texting memes about my concert nap. I retaliated with alarm clock photos and a review reading adequately loud. His offended voice notes made me realize he was funny when no cameras were watching. The system hated everything. Plot deviation, 81% emergency task. Resign from Vale Meridian. Travel away from active routes for 72 hours. I blinked. You want me to run away? Distance may reset character attachment. For the first time in weeks, the system had suggested something I also wanted. Not because I disliked Dominic. That was the problem. I liked him too much. Small acts landed harder than the novel's grand gestures. Dominic remembered I hated raisins, kept ginger candy for my car sickness, moved meetings when I looked exhausted, and listened even when I joked to avoid saying something real. I was beginning to want a future the story had never given me permission to imagine. So I submitted 3 vacation days instead of resigning, told Grace I needed space, and booked a train to Boston. I chose Boston because it was cold, walkable, and full of old stone buildings where I could pretend to be emotionally unavailable in historic surroundings. My hotel was in Back Bay. I spent the first afternoon wandering Beacon Hill, buying coffee, and congratulating myself on successfully escaping all major characters. At 6 p.m., a black SUV stopped beside the curb. The window lowered. Blake Carter looked out. I closed my eyes. No, he grinned. Hi, why are you in Boston? Radio interview. Charity performance. Existing in the Northeast. A buried memory of Grace reciting his schedule surfaced far too late. Right, I said. The charity performance. You knew? I knew and then aggressively forgot. Romantic. Stop doing that. He got out in a black wool coat and baseball cap, looking less like an idol and more like a man who occasionally forgot groceries. You look disappointed. I crossed state lines. For me? To avoid you. Still romantic. He walked beside me anyway. To my surprise, Blake was easy company. He bought hot chocolate from a cafe near Boston Common. He complained about interviews. I complained about rich people who scheduled breakfast meetings before 8. At an arcade near Fenway, he lost to me at air hockey and accused me of hidden athletic training. I was an emergency nurse, I said automatically. He blinked. I froze. Wrong life. Were? In college, I said quickly. I worked in an emergency department. Not technically impossible. Blake studied me, then let it go. Later, snow began falling as we walked toward the public garden. The city softened under it. Street lamps turned each flake gold for half a second. Blake stopped beneath a bare tree. You know I like you, right? I nearly walked into a bench. People usually build up to that. I write songs. I build up professionally. I looked at him. His expression was playful, but his eyes were not. Blake, I know. He put his hands in his coat pockets. There's someone else. I said nothing. He smiled faintly. You make the same face every time someone says his name. What face? Like you're annoyed the sun rose without your permission. That does not make sense. It does if you're in love with a difficult man. My throat tightened. I looked away toward the frozen edge of the pond. I'm not in love. Okay, that was too easy. I'm famous, not stupid. He nudged my shoulder with his. I still get to flirt with you until you officially tell me to stop. I glanced at him. Stop, cruel, devastating. He laughed and the tension broke. That night, back at the hotel, I received a text from Noah. Dominic has called me twice asking if I know where you are. Then another. I told him no. Then, I lied. You owe me dinner. I smiled despite myself. A final message arrived. He looks terrible. My chest ached. The system appeared. Distance reset unsuccessful. No kidding. Dominic Vale Elliott Hayes, 91%. I stared at the number, then my phone rang. Dominic. I answered on the fourth ring. Hello. His breath came through first, then his voice. Are you safe? 2 words. No accusation. No demand to return. Just that. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed. Yes, good. Silence. I needed space, I said. I know. I should have told you. Yes. You could pretend not to be right all the time. I'm trying. I laughed softly. On the other end, his breathing eased. I won't come after you, he said. Not unless you ask. Something inside me loosened. Dominic. Yes? Thank you. He was quiet for a moment. Then, come home when you want to. Not come back to work. Home. He hung up before I could ask whether he knew what he had said. I lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling. The system hovered above me. Host heart rate elevated. Mind your business. I returned to New York on Sunday evening. Dominic did not meet me at Penn Station. I had not asked him to. That should have been a relief. Instead, I spent the taxi ride checking the sidewalk like an idiot. On Monday, he was in a board meeting when I arrived. His office door remained closed until nearly noon. I told myself I was grateful. At 12:14, the door opened. Dominic stepped out. He saw me, stopped. Neither of us moved for one long second. Then he crossed the office. Welcome back, he said. That was all. No dramatic embrace. No possessive speech. He respected the space I had asked for. It nearly destroyed me. Thanks. His gaze dropped to the green scarf around my neck. A small warmth entered his eyes. He walked away before I could make a joke. I hated mature communication. It left me defenseless. That afternoon, Noah invited me to the Hudson Arts residence site. We took Amtrak north along the river, gray water flashing through bare trees. The old railway building stood near the waterfront, brick walls weathered but beautiful. Inside, winter light fell through tall industrial windows onto dust and steel beams. Owen Parker, 30, a beta architect from Boston, met us over preservation drawings. Rolled sleeves, patient eyes, and zero fear of telling wealthy donors their ideas were structurally impossible. Noah wants to move a 19th century wall 6 feet to the left, Owen told me by way of greeting. Noah took the coffee from Owen's hand without asking. Owen thinks walls have feelings. They have load paths. That sounds like feelings for architects. Owen looked at me. You see what I deal with? I liked him immediately. More importantly, Noah smiled at him without performing gentleness for anyone. I noticed it, filed it under not my business, and for once, left a plot alone. Noah walked me through the future reading room. My mother wanted to build something like this, he said. I glanced at him. He touched the locket, its clasp snagged. She thought rich families spent too much time preserving names and not enough preserving useful things. That sounds wise. She was exhausting. He smiled. We stood beneath the old trusses in comfortable silence. Then Noah said, I'm not going to compete with Dominic. I nearly tripped over a coil of extension cord. Who said anything about competing? Blake called me. Why does everyone have everyone's number? Rich people network. That is sinister. Noah laughed, then became serious. I like you, Elliot. My humor disappeared. He looked directly at me. I liked you because you were awkward and kind while trying to be someone else. Then you put your arm into freezing water for something that mattered to me. I know you keep calling it nothing. I looked down. It was a locket. It was mine. The sentence echoed Dominic's question. And you? Noah stepped closer. But liking someone doesn't make them a prize. I don't want to win you, and I definitely don't want you choosing me because you think some invisible rule says you should. My head snapped up. His eyes narrowed slightly. I don't know what is going on with you, he said, but half the time you look at me like you're waiting for me to become someone else. The system flickered nervously. I swallowed. Noah, you don't owe me an explanation. He smiled, gentler now. Just stop trying to arrange my life like furniture. I stared at him, then laughed, a real laugh, helpless and relieved. I have been doing that, haven't I? Terribly. I thought I was subtle. You once locked Dominic and me in a conference room with wine. That could happen to anyone. You took the door handle. It was loose. Noah shook his head. When we returned to Manhattan, the system appeared one more time. Original Noah route irrecoverable. I waited for panic. None came. Okay, I said. Host acknowledges failure? No. I looked through the train window at the Hudson reflecting evening light. I think I'm finally acknowledging that he's a person. The system did not answer. For the first time, I did not need it to. The final villain of my second life arrived in the form of a spreadsheet. Mason Wells had not forgiven me for humiliating him in Newport. More accurately, I had made one sarcastic comment while he humiliated himself, but men like Mason treated witnesses as accomplices. 2 weeks later, the Bennett Foundation held a donor preview at the Morgan Library and Museum. Noah would announce the Hudson Project's first major grant. Vale Meridian sponsored restoration, and Blake provided the inevitable celebrity complication. I was helping Grace verify guest lists when she frowned at her laptop. Something's wrong. I leaned over. A confidential donor spreadsheet had been emailed to 3 reporters from my Vale Meridian account. My stomach dropped. The attachment included private pledge amounts and internal notes. Not criminal secrets, not dangerous information, but enough to embarrass donors and damage Noah's project. The email timestamp showed 2:11 a.m. I had been asleep. For once, not at a concert. Grace's face went still. Do not touch anything. Good advice generally. Dominic appeared 5 minutes later. He read the email once. Then he looked at me. I braced myself. In the original novel, this was close to Elliot's downfall. Dominic discovered his betrayal, fired him, and publicly defended Noah. The system appeared. Final correction. Accept responsibility. Restore original canon fodder ending. My chest tightened. If I confessed, perhaps the story would reset. Perhaps I could go home. Back to Seattle. Back to my old hospital, my old apartment, my old life. A life where Dominic Vale did not exist. Dominic closed the laptop. Elliot didn't send it. Grace nodded. I know. I stared at them. You do? Dominic looked almost offended. You use dashes in internal notes. What? The fake email uses semicolons. Grace added, you also never write kindly find attached. You hate that phrase. I do hate that phrase. Dominic's gaze softened. And you were with me at 2:11. I stopped breathing. Grace looked between us. Dominic corrected smoothly. On a call. I coughed. Yes, a call, very professional. Fully clothed. Grace closed her eyes. Dominic's ears turned slightly red. We had actually been on the phone until nearly 3, arguing after his bored dinner about whether Die Hard counted as a Christmas movie. I had never felt more compromised by cinema. Grace traced the email header. The message was sent at 2:11, but it was created and scheduled weeks ago during the Newport planning session. Someone used your logged-in workstation. We can pull building access records and workstation logs. My old medical instincts returned, not medicine exactly, but the same calm that came when a room needed someone to stop panicking. Don't accuse anyone yet, I said. If they think it worked, they'll make a second move. Dominic looked at me. You have a plan. I have spite and basic data literacy. His mouth curved, my favorite combination. We set a trap that was almost disappointingly legal. Grace created a separate harmless version of the revised donor list for every person with access, each carrying a tiny invisible watermark and a unique spacing pattern. Mason received version M07. Within an hour, a gossip account posted a screenshot. The watermark in the screenshot read M07. Building records then confirmed Mason had entered the planning suite during the window when my email was scheduled. Noah looked at it and sighed. He really is bad at this. Generational wealth reduces natural selection, I said. At the event that evening, Mason arrived smiling. He had no idea we knew. Dominic wanted to handle it privately. Noah wanted to handle it elegantly. I wanted popcorn. We compromised. During the donor presentation, Noah thanked everyone for supporting the arts residents. Then he added, with perfect sweetness, and a special thank you to my cousin Mason, whose enthusiastic interest in our internal spreadsheets has inspired us to improve cybersecurity. A few people laughed uncertainly. Mason went pale. On the screen behind Noah appeared a slide titled, "Why Watermarks Are Your Friend." Grace had made it. I loved her. The slide showed the watermark map, with leaked version M07 highlighted for comparison. No private donor information appeared. Just formatting markers. Noah smiled at Mason. We'll discuss access privileges Monday. That was it. No shouting. No violence. No revenge beyond professional embarrassment and the unbearable sound of wealthy people politely pretending not to stare. Mason left before dessert. Blake leaned toward me during the applause. That was cruel. It was a PowerPoint. Exactly. Dominic stood on my other side. His fingers brushed the back of my hand. Not hidden. Not quite public either. Just there. The system flashed. Final correction T expired. Original plot cannot be restored. I looked at the words. My heart should have sunk. Instead, I felt light. I whispered, "Good." Dominic turned. "What?" I looked at him. Nothing. Then I changed my mind. No, not nothing. His attention sharpened. I smiled. I'm tired of saying that. The last gala of winter returned us to Ohika Castle. By then, Hudson had funding. Mason was removed from Foundation operations and quietly ignored. Blake released a new single fans insisted was about me. He sincerely denied it. Noah had started dating Owen, the Boston architect, whose coffee he had been stealing since our site visit. The system had stopped assigning tasks. It simply watched. That should have made me nervous. Instead, I felt free. Oheka glowed with candlelight, black velvet, and gold masks. Snow covered the gardens, and the castle felt suspended between centuries despite the phones and stock market gossip inside. Dominic found me beside the ballroom doors. He wore a black mask that did nothing to make him less recognizable. "You're avoiding me," he said. "I'm standing 12 feet from you." Emotionally, rude, accurate, he offered his hand. "Dance with me." "I don't dance." "You danced with Blake at the rehearsal dinner in Boston. That was blackmail. You looked happy. I was stepping on his shoes." Dominic waited. I put my hand in his. The string quartet moved into a slow arrangement of a modern song. Dominic guided me onto the floor. He danced well. Of course he did. "What kind of evil boarding school teaches CEOs ballroom dancing?" I asked. "My mother." "That's less cinematic. She would be offended." His hand settled at my waist. Mine rested on his shoulder. For a while we moved without jokes. His gaze stayed on me. Warm, steady, patient. That patience frightened me more than pursuit ever had. Because he was giving me room to choose. And choosing meant admitting I wanted to stay. The system appeared at the edge of my vision. Return option available. I stopped dancing. Dominic's brows drew together. "Elliot?" The blue screen expanded. "Original world return can be initiated tonight. Current world memories may persist. Current world relationships will continue without host." My throat tightened. This was what I had wanted from the beginning. Seattle, my old name, my hospital badge. Friends frozen in a timeline that had not yet learned how to miss me. My real life. Except it no longer felt like the only real one. Dominic touched my elbow. "You went pale. I need air." He followed me onto the terrace. That was when Noah appeared, breathless, holding a velvet box. "Elliot, the jeweler finally fixed the clasp on my mother's locket. I was trying to show you before dinner." He opened the box. A gust caught the little ribbon beneath it. Noah grabbed for the lid. The box struck the terrace rail, bounced once, and dropped into the reflecting pool below. For 1 second, no one moved. Then the system chimed almost hopefully. Familiar plot event detected. I laughed, actually laughed. Noah stared at me. Dominic said, "Don't, I wasn't going to." The system flashed. Host may retrieve object to reinforce original role. I looked at the black water, then at Dominic, then at Noah. "I have grown as a person," I announced. Noah smiled. "Proud of you." A gust skimmed across the pool, pushing the little floating box farther from the ledge. I crouched and reached with a decorative cane from the terrace stand. The cane slipped. The box drifted farther. Dominic folded his arms. "Still growing? Personal development is not linear." I stepped onto the shallow ledge. "Elliot, it's 6 inches." The stone was icy. My foot slid. I went into the pool with a spectacular splash. The box bumped against my knee, and I caught it before it drifted away. Noah lunged to help from the ledge. I grabbed his sleeve with my free hand, mostly to keep my dignity from floating off separately. Dominic swore. The system produced a triumphant chime, and that was how we arrived at the moment where this story began. Water to my thighs, velvet box in one hand, Noah's sleeve in the other. Dominic came into the water after me, took the box, wrapped one hand around my wrist, and told me he would drain every fountain in New York State. Then he touched my face. "Tell me to stop," he said. Blake called my name from inside. Noah called too. The system announced 97% romantic deviation, and suddenly I understood. The system was no longer waiting for me to repair the story. It was waiting for me to decide whether I would leave it. These were not roots anymore. They were people. Noah, who had chosen his own life. Blake, who had learned that affection did not guarantee possession. Dominic, who had never once demanded that I love him back, and me, the canon Fodder character who had spent 2 lives treating himself like something expendable. I looked at Dominic. Snow clung to his dark lashes. His hand was warm against my cheek. "I don't want you to stop," I said. His breath caught. I heard Noah make a tiny victorious noise behind us. Blake from the doorway said finally. I ignored them. Dominic's gaze searched mine. "Are you sure?" "Yes, for tonight," I smiled. "For the inconveniently foreseeable future." He laughed, a real laugh, low and startled, then he kissed me. There was nothing dramatic about it except what it did to me. His mouth was warm despite the cold. One hand stayed at my cheek, the other careful at my waist. I caught his wet lapels and pulled him closer. The kiss deepened only slightly, sweet, breathless, intimate enough that the ballroom behind us disappeared. Cedar, snow, champagne in the air, my own heartbeat loud in my ears. When we parted, Dominic rested his forehead against mine. "You're shaking. I'm emotional. You're freezing. Also that." He lifted me out of the fountain. I sighed. "You really enjoy carrying me." "I enjoy preventing you from making worse decisions." "That sounds exhausting." "It is." Inside, Noah wrapped me in a blanket. Blake handed Dominic a towel and said, "Congratulations, you defeated basic communication." Dominic ignored him. The system appeared one final time. "Original plot has ended. Final choice available. Return. Resume suspended original world time and receive completion compensation. Remain. Close the return path and continue this unscripted life." The same number that had once made me negotiate with my principles glowed beneath return. Funny. It looked much smaller now. Confirm remain? I looked around, at Noah laughing with Owen near the doorway, at Blake stealing dessert from a passing tray, at Grace marching toward me with the expression of a woman preparing a lecture about liability, at Dominic, wet-haired and furious, and holding my cold hands between his own. My first life had taught me how to keep people alive. This one had taught me that living was not the same thing as surviving usefulness. I looked at the system. Yes. The blue light softened. Confirmed, then it vanished. Dominic studied my face. "What are you smiling at?" "You," he went still. I had discovered this was the fastest way to disarm him. "Dangerous answer," he murmured. "CEO feedback or personal tyranny?" "Neither." He raised my hand and kissed my knuckles. "Personal happiness." That was worse. I fell in love with him a little more. Spring arrived slowly in New York. Dominic and I did not become perfect after the kiss. We became real. We argued about work boundaries. I refused his car. He refused my vending machine diet. I learned he went silent when afraid. He learned I got funnier when afraid, which made him suspicious of my best jokes. Our first official date was at a small Italian restaurant in the West Village, where Dominic had reserved the entire back room. I made him give it back. "We are not dining like fugitives," I said. "You dislike crowds. I dislike being stared at by investment bankers. Regular people are fine." so we sat at a normal table. Halfway through dinner, a stranger recognized him. Dominic looked at me. I took a sip of wine, character building. He kicked my shoe under the table. Our relationship became public 3 months later when Blake posted a photograph from Noah's Hudson residence opening. In the background, Dominic was holding my coat while I argued with a catering table. Fans zoomed in. The internet did what the internet does. Blake texted. "Oops," I replied. "I hope your next album flops." It did not. Noah's project flourished. He and Owen moved into an apartment overlooking Riverside Park. Grace became CEO of a new Vale Meridian public benefit subsidiary and informed Dominic that this was compensation for years of babysitting. A year after Oheka, Dominic took me back to the Met Cloisters. We stood in the same winter garden where he had warmed my hands after my first ridiculous mission. The fountain was empty for the season. "Good," I said. "No opportunities." Dominic reached into his coat. I immediately became suspicious. If that is a corporate restructuring document, I'm leaving. He took out a small ring box. My mouth went dry. Dominic looked almost calm. Almost. His fingers trembled once. That tiny movement undid me more than any grand speech could have. "I spent most of my life believing love was a risk to manage," he said. "Then you arrived and treated every risk like a joke. That is unfair." I also panicked privately. His mouth curved. "I know." He opened the box. A simple platinum band caught the pale winter light. "Elliot Hayes, will you make my life permanently less manageable?" My eyes burned. I hated emotional sincerity. It was difficult to make fun of, so I did the only reasonable thing. I held out my hand. "Yes." Dominic slid the ring onto my finger. Then I added, "But if you ever buy a fountain, I'm divorcing you." He pulled me into his arms. "No fountains. Put it in the prenup." "I will." We married the following October at a restored stone estate in the Hudson Valley, surrounded by maples turning red and gold. Noah stood beside me as my witness. Blake performed 1 song and complained that Dominic refused to let him perform 3. Grace cried discreetly and denied it aggressively. Dominic wore black, I wore deep green. When he took my hands beneath the old stone arch, his thumbs brushed the ring on my finger. There were no systems, no missions, no assigned roles, just his eyes on mine. And when the officiant asked if I chose him, I finally understood why the word mattered. Choose. Not obey, not follow, not fulfill. Choose, I do, I said. Dominic smiled, and this time when he kissed me, there was no one left to correct the story. Extra story, 1 year after the wedding. Marriage did not cure Dominic of his chronic need to make sure I had eaten lunch. It only made him more creative about pretending it was accidental. For example, he no longer said, "You forgot lunch," he said. "I accidentally ordered too much, every day, at exactly 12:30. From restaurants I liked. One rainy October Sunday, I found him in our Manhattan kitchen wearing gray sweatpants, a black t-shirt, and a crisis expression. He was holding a pancake spatula. Smoke drifted toward the ceiling. I leaned against the doorway. Do I call the fire department or Grace? Dominic looked at the pan. Neither. Blink twice if breakfast has taken you hostage. He turned off the burner. I was trying to surprise you. Something warm opened in my chest. I walked over and looked at the pancake. It resembled Rhode Island after a natural disaster. "It's beautiful," I said. "You're lying. Marriage is compromise." He caught me around the waist before I could escape. I laughed as he pulled me against him. His chin rested on my shoulder. Rain blurred the skyline beyond the windows. The apartment smelled like coffee, butter, and one deeply unsuccessful pancake. "Happy anniversary," he murmured. I turned in his arms. 1 year, 1 year, no fountains, no fountains. I narrowed my eyes. "You sound too confident." Dominic reached into a drawer. He handed me 2 train tickets. New York to Boston. I looked up. "Why Boston?" "You once ran there to get away from me. I remember. I thought we could go back under better circumstances." I smiled. "You are extremely sentimental for a man who once described romance as inefficient." I was wrong. Say it again. "No, Dominic." He kissed me instead. The kiss was slow and familiar, built less from urgency than from knowing exactly how the other would lean and breathe. Later that afternoon, we walked through Beacon Hill under one umbrella. Dominic carried it because he was taller. I carried the pastries because I had priorities. We stopped near the public garden, where Blake had once recognized my feelings long before I had. The trees burned red around the paths. Dominic took my hand. No cameras, no gala, no system chimes. Just traffic in the distance, wet leaves under our shoes, and his thumb moving over my wedding ring. "What?" I asked when I caught him looking at me. "Nothing," I gasped. "You know I hate that answer." He smiled. Then he leaned close enough that his breath warmed my ear. I was thinking I would choose you again. For once I had no joke ready. I squeezed his hand. Good, I said softly. Because I'm still choosing you too. And we kept walking, slowly, with nowhere we needed to run. If you stayed with Elliot and Dominic to the end, thank you. Follow the channel for more BL stories where broken plots become happy endings, and I'll see you in the next one.